Tree presents paranormal activities. First event. My best friend lived in a murder house. The house was demolished shortly after the murders in the early 1970s because no one would buy it, but the basement and a corner of the foundation at ground level were left and incorporated into the new house. The murder is actually a cold case, so I'm conflicted about linking to those materials out of consideration for the family, who I do not know personally but still live in my hometown. My friend, let's call him Tom, had kind of a wacky home life. His mom died when he was very young, and his dad, who is a great guy, is physically disabled and had neither the inclination nor the ability to stay on top of him much. This lack of supervision made Tom's house the preferred location for sleepovers when we were 13 to 15 because we could roam the streets, stay up all night playing video games, etc. The other occupants of the house were Tom's sister Kate, Tom's mentally handicapped brother Ted, and Tom's older half-brother and his fiancée, who had their own little apartment set up in the basement. Tom was pretty upfront about it the first time I stayed over, and advised me to just ignore anything weird that happened. I thought he was messing with me at first, but then I started to notice little things. Tom would always lock his room whenever we left the house. Kate was kind of a klepto, but things were never where we left them. A frequent example of this was Tom's books. He always kept 2 to 3 books he was reading in a neat stack on the windowsill next to his bed, but we'd get back to his house, unlock the door and find the books stacked in a pyramid shape. Also, things tended to go missing from Tom's room a lot and then reappear. Tom had exactly 3 pieces of furniture in his room: a bed, a desk, and a ratty old recliner. When something went missing, we'd check behind the desk, under the bed, even turn the recliner upside down to no avail. A few days later, whatever we had been looking for would be sitting on the corner of the desk like it had been there all along. You would also sometimes hear whispers in your ear. Most of the time only one person would hear it, but there were times where 3 to 4 of us all heard the same thing at the same time. A fairly common example was when you'd be getting your stuff together to go back home, you'd hear "Don't go yet" or "Don't leave me." This was the innocent stuff, which we later attributed to the spirits of the murder victims, 2 preteen girls. The less innocent stuff was pretty messed up, but we were rebellious teenagers and apparently valued freedom over sanity. Something used to laugh maniacally in a deep, booming male voice around 3 a.m. Not every night, but most. Tom's dad and brothers all have highish voices, and their laughs are very distinctive and kind of silly. If you tried to follow the laughter, it would eventually lead you to the basement. Tom's older brother and his fiancée would always be confused the next morning if we told them, because they went to bed around 9 p.m. most nights and never heard a thing. There was a bathroom in the basement that no one ever used, and one day I found out why. We were fighting with sticks or something, classic, in the backyard, and I ran in because it was convenient. I finished my business without incident and went to open the door, but the knob wouldn't turn, like someone was holding it. Then the lights went out and the faucet turned on full blast. I kept trying the handle and pounded on the tiny basement window until Tom opened the door from the other side. He had been in the backyard until he heard me knocking on the window. I heard him run down the stairs just before he opened the door, and no one else was home. There was no lock on that handle and seemingly nothing wrong with the light switch/bulb. Finally, Tom's family was really musical, and Tom himself was kind of a musical prodigy as a kid, so they had a baby grand piano in the living room. This thing played itself constantly when everyone was accounted for in bed. Most of the times it would just be random notes or chords, but the one time I heard it play longer, it sounded like something from a horror movie score. Other weirdness included Kate in general. She was always really moody and distant and became a goth out of nowhere. Not that weird for a girl of 15, but she got goth. Books of witchcraft, black candles, etc. A few times we caught her out in the backyard with her friends making pentagrams and chanting. Once a slightly younger, kinda naive friend of ours disappeared into her room for an hour during a party and came out covered in weird marks. I couldn't get him to talk about it. She fell in with a pretty rough crowd after high school and unfortunately died quite young. Tom informed me at some point that the remaining corner of the original house's foundation was the part under Kate's room. Tom's brother Ted deserves special mention as well. He wasn't especially verbal, but he is far higher functioning than he usually presented. Every time one of these incidents occurred, he would get really freaked out, and a few times this happened before the incident occurred. Often he would point to seemingly random corners of the house and shout "No!" or "Go away." One of Tom's dad's hobbies was making stained glass art in his workshop in the garage. He was always super protective of his setup, and we were forbidden from even going in the garage, which he kept locked at all times unless he was in there. One night after a particularly raucous round of laughter it went dead silent and we heard glass shattering. We met up with his dad at the bottom of the stairs. He tried the handle and it was locked. The actual garage door had been rusted shut for years. When he unlocked the door and turned on the light, all of his work was smashed. Every single piece. There was a screwdriver stuck in the table like a knife. His dad had enough after this and called a medium to come and smudge the whole house. The next day there was a wiring fault and the entire second story of the house burned down before it was put out. Ted actually got burned in the fire and might have died if Tom hadn't pulled him to safety. After a somewhat crappy stay in a temporary apartment they moved back in and, as far as I know, haven't had any serious issues since. Second event. Weird experiences in our house. My spouse has owned our home for the last 15 years, the first 9 with his ex and the last 3 I've lived here with him. When I first moved in, it was uncomfortable. I told myself it was just a lot of change and it was just that the energy around us was settling as we settled into our new life together. But then I stopped sleeping, and when I did sleep, my nightmares would be so bad that I'd wake up sobbing. I could hear someone walking around, going up and down the stairs at night, but I just ignored it. Until the kids started to complain that they were hearing it too. Then it all stopped, about 6 months in. I had put salt in all the corners of the rooms, waved sage around, said made-up prayers, begged whatever it was to just go away, and it seemed like it worked. I don't believe in God, but I even had my hubby go get some holy water and splashed that around, just in case. Whether any of that made a difference or not, it was peaceful. Maybe it was all in my head. Then, about a year ago, my stepson said that he needed to sleep on the couch. I asked why, and he said that the man in the hat who came into his room at night had told him that he couldn't sleep in there anymore. He said it like I should know exactly who he was talking about, like this guy was just someone who hung out here all the time. Our invisible roommate. I asked what he looked like and what he usually said to him. Well, the first time he came in he told me that if I was smart, I wouldn't look at him, but I opened my eyes enough to see that he was tall and wearing a weird hat. He always says I should just keep my eyes closed. Now I just sleep facing the window because he likes to sit by my desk. The desk is next to his door, across from the window, so his back would be to the door when he sleeps like this. I was terrified. My own son, many years ago, had talked about a man in his room wearing a funny hat. I showed my stepson a picture of a top hat and he said it was kind of like that. I did all the same things, salt, holy water, begging it to leave, etc. Finally he just stopped talking about it and would sleep in his room again. A few months ago, I started having a recurring nightmare. I've had dreams since I was a little kid that are strange. In fact, one is actually the earliest memory I have, and I still have the same dream now, almost 40 years later. But this new dream is one where I'm standing in the doorway of our bedroom, but my bedroom isn't there. We live in a raised ranch, so the stairs go down to the finished basement and there's a bedroom to the right, a bathroom in front of the stairs, and my room and a living room to the left. In the dream I'm standing where my doorway would be, but the entire basement is unfinished. I just know it's my basement. A man shoots a woman in the head at the base of the stairs and then turns the gun on himself. This, as far as I know, has never happened in this house. I've talked to the neighbors who've lived here since this house was built, and I believe them when they say nothing like this has ever happened here. But, the dream happens weekly. I'm taking sleep meds now to try and sleep. My spouse has been angry, moody, emotional. Turns out he's not sleeping well. About 6 weeks ago, the dog was panting so heavily at 4:30 a.m. that it woke me up. I was worried something was wrong with her. As I was getting up to take her outside, he suddenly sat up straight in bed in a panic, dripping in sweat. I said to him, "Good, since you're up, you can take her to pee." He was in a daze. Now I say it was like a trance, to be completely honest, but he got up and took her upstairs. About 2 minutes later, I hear him hit the ground. I run up to find him rolling around, bloodied, on the floor. What he remembers is the fridge door being open. He had a water bottle in his hand and he passed out and hit his head on the china cabinet. He ended up needing 10 stitches at emergency. He doesn't remember anything about getting out of bed and going upstairs, just being in the fridge and passing out. Shortly after that incident, we were sleeping and at, 4:30 a.m., I woke up because I could hear one of the kids walking around upstairs. It sounded like they were sneaking out to play on the computer. My desk is actually a vanity from my great-grandma from 1913, and the bench you sit on makes a very distinctive sound when you sit on it. So I figured they were sneaking in some World of Warcraft because, they're brats but we love them. So I went up to catch them. As I'm going up the stairs, I hear the kettle turn on. It's a glass one that lights up and beeps when it starts and stops. By the time I get to the kitchen, 3 seconds tops, I realize that everyone was asleep and the only thing out of the norm was that the kettle was boiling. If anyone had turned it on when it beeped, they would have been in my field of view when they left the kitchen. I was freaked out but tried to debunk it, looked the reviews up for the kettle, etc. Chalked it up to an electrical issue. We even tried to recreate the timing of it all, by having me start up the stairs in the same spot while my husband turns the kettle on, and there is absolutely no way he could completely disappear from view by the time I get from point A to point B. No possible way. That kettle has turned on at the same time at least 3 other times since. The last time it happened, my husband had a similar incident where he sat right up in bed, dripping with sweat, and was totally confused about why he was awake. I made him lay back down so he didn't pass out again. I now take the kettle off the base before bed, so it won't turn on. All has been calm and peaceful, except I still can't sleep without prescription meds. I can't figure out the significance of 4:30 a.m. Tonight, hubby comes up and whispers to me that he's terrified. He's been sitting in the office and the TV has turned itself on 6 times in a row. He deliberately placed the remote on the ledge across from him so that he could see if an animal stepped on it, he knew he wasn't accidentally touching it, etc. What's strange is a friend of mine reached out right around the time of the first kettle incident to say that she's never experienced this before, but that she thinks someone is trying to reach my husband. As in a ghost/spirit. She is not someone who says she's a psychic. It freaked her out to even tell me because it made no sense to her. It literally just came to her one day when he looked at a picture of him that I'd posted on Facebook, while we were out riding in our side-by-side. She has never met my husband. We are at a loss. He can't think of who it could be. I'm scared by the freaky dream/sleep issues, and I don't want whatever this could be to bother the kids. Full disclosure, I've been told that I have the ability to see things, but I've never tapped into that or really even believed it. I'm starting to wonder now if this is something/someone that was already here, if it's someone following him, or if it's related to me. Whatever it is, it's unnerving. But maybe not bad. It's just something that likes to play with electronics, so we know it's here. Maybe that's separate from the nightmares?